how did you manage to escape from your flat when the pogrom started?
Thank you. Well, this is the reason you have the map of my house. Change it, please. See that apartment right there? That's where we lived. We were part of a complex of 10, 15 apartments there with 3 entrances to that yard. There was an entrance right here, about 3.5 feet wide, which was locked at 6 o'clock at night and opened at 6 o'clock in the morning. There was another entrance on the other side. You notice right that heavy marked wall right there. That was also a gate and was locked at the same time. And there was this gate right here. This one, the bigger one.
The bigger one?
This side.
Right.
This one, right here.
Oh, here.
Right there. Where the trucks would come up for delivery with furniture or whatever it is, because none of these apartments were on the main floor, were upstairs, and the only entrance that you had to those apartments were through these 3 doors. The main floor was occupied by stores that had no entrance to the yard. They only had entrance and exit to the street. Okay. So the moment we heard the noise and saw what's going on, and everybody acted in the same way as we did, those doors were closed. Everybody remained quiet. We were able to go to our neighbors and see what's happening on the other streets throughout the 3 days. And the second day, some of those youngsters were trying to pry open that big gate. And there was a young woman, probably around 22 at the time, who was a nanny to one of the families that had a young child, came out bearing a big cross on the chest. Hey, you don't have to worry about this anymore. You were picked up yesterday. And you will ask another question that should be very interesting. How in the world did those youngsters know where a Jewish family lives to get them out throughout the town? Well, like in every neighborhood, there are people that usually like to be next to each other. So there's a Jewish area, there's an Armenian area, I'm talking about here. There's a Greek area, you know those things. Well, that's what happened there too. There were quartiers where Jewish people live. And every household, Jewish household, has a little marking on the doorpost, which is called a mezuzah. For your benefit, you can call it a good luck piece, which has a little scroll with a portion from the Old Testament. So it was very easy to spot a Jewish household and go in and take out the people from it. The other thing that you may ask, if you have no other questions at the moment, please.
Yeah, well,
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
so were these Nazi soldiers that picked you up? Or
Pardon me?
Who the people that picked you up?
Very good question. Thank you. See, the Nazis in Germany started and called themselves nationalist Germans started the movement in 1933 when, with Adolf Hitler as the head. And equally in many countries in Europe, the young people joined the Nazi parties in each of the countries. In Romania, those parties was called the parties of very light right-wing Nazis, were called the Legionnaires. And they were noted to wear a green shirt and a green beret. King Karon II was the ruler of Romania until 1940. In 1940, he abdicated his throne, left for Europe, for Portugal, I believe it was, and asked his son Michael, who was a very young fellow, around 20, 21 years old, to take the throne. So he was named king and called Michael II. By the end of 1940, the beginning of 1941, he abdicated in favor of Ioan Antonescu, who happened to be one of the very prestigious generals and who became prime minister, and the reign of power was given to him at the beginning of 1941. These young legionnaires wanted to grab the power because Ioan Antonescu was not strong enough for them as a Nazi, and they wanted to take the power. And the struggle between the government and these young legionnaires, Nazi party, started fomenting, and the Jews were the victims. After 7 days, the government intervened, and basically, for all intents and purposes, life returned to normal. Now, normal, to me and to everybody else, it's not normal for you. What it means basically that there was quiet on the streets, soldiers were on the street, life became to normal in the sense that stores were open with as little as they had to sell for particular food. The Jews lost whatever they had. It was taken away from them. It was nationalized. Houses, businesses. The Jewish children in 1940 were not allowed to go anymore to Romanian schools. That was the only system of schooling in Romania, run by the government. So that was normal for us. We're not allowed weapons. Radios existed, but a Jewish person could not own a radio. And a kitchen knife larger than this was considered a weapon, and if you were caught with it, you were punished to death. That was normalcy. And believe it or not, it was not very different from the Romanians, non-Jewish people, because they still had to go to wait in lines for the food, except of all the other restrictions was not impressed upon them. So I hope that I answer your question. Is there any other question? Yes,
Following the pogrom by the Legionnaires,
I'm sorry?
following the pogrom,
Yes,
what was left for you during the war years following?
okay. By the way, let me point out to you another place, Bucharest, the capital of Romania at the time. The same kind of people had a listing of the leaders of the Jewish community, about 2,000 of them. They picked them up of their homes. They took them to the slaughterhouse, undressed them, tied their feet, hung them on a hook, and split them in half. 2,000 in Bucharest at the same time. And at the same time, all the smaller towns in the province of Moldova, which is just there where it is, were emptied of the Jews because Marshal Antonescu, or Ioan Antonescu, considered them as the fifth column. That means being communists and spies for the Russians. So they were all emptied out of those towns, lost everything, took anything that they could on their back, and went into Transnistria, which you see there, Transnistria, just where that pointer is. 300,000 of them, I will answer your question too. 300,000 of them were taken, they were not killed. They lost all the possessions. They were left to starve and being exposed to the winters, harsh winters and sickness. 300,000 of them died during the wartime, which ended up for Romania in 1944, August the 23rd. Yes, your question again, please, was?
About your experience following the
Oh,
pogrom.
yes. Well, I was 13 years old when this happened. By the end of the war, I was 13 and 3 is 16 years old. I was under the age where the Jewish people were taken to forced labor. That forced labor meant that they were picked up by truck from a designated point and taken out either into the city to dig up trenches or towards the border with Russia, where they dug up trenches in case the tide of the war turned around and they would have to defend those cities. And also, those trenches served as shelters during when the cities were bombarded by airplanes. So basically this way. So I was not involved directly, unfortunately, but rather fortunately, but my parents, my father was, and everybody that I knew of age was there. Any other question?
I have a question. What was the Jewish population of Romania before the war and what was it after the war?
Romanian population before the war was close to 1 million. After the war was 300,000. Today, the Jewish population of Romania is probably about 5,000, with most of the people, Jewish people living in Bucharest, few in Iași. All the others are all over the world, including Israel, and so that's what happened. Now, are there any more questions? Okay.
Sorry, there's one more.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This
Go ahead.
lady here.
How did you get reunited back with your uncle and the rest of your family?
I'm sorry. How did I?
Get back in touch with your uncle and the rest of you.
Well, they were let go, okay, from the ghetto, if you want to call it that way. And they came back to their family and Iași. That's how we knew they were alive. Like many others that came back as survivors from the trains. So they took up the normal life. Okay. Now, I like to, yes, go ahead.
How did your family dynamics change after the war ended?
Yeah, but did not change really very much. The Communist Party took over the country starting after 1944. The Communist Party became very, very strong. They killed most of the leaders, liberal leaders in the country, and they took over power. In 1941, they nationalized every property that anyone had and changed the money, and it became a communist ruled country, which was supposed to be terminated about 10, 15 years ago, when the leader, which I forget at this moment, it will come back to me, was, pardon me? Ceausescu, that's right, Ceausescu, was deposed and killed, and the country remained basically without communism. But you know something, those people were very smart, like in any other country in the Eastern Europe. Today they were communists, tomorrow they became liberals. So they're still ruling the country is still in poverty. The people that lived for 2 generations under the communism don't forget how to look for jobs. They don't want jobs, they want to be kept by the government. And they are in a dreamland. However, the younger people are much more realistic. They started looking for jobs, they started training themselves for jobs, for whatever jobs are available, because the economy is not a good one. And basically life is continuing. The same thing in Romania, the same in Ukraine, no different in Russia. Poland is a little bit better. Hungary, well, became a little bit freer about a few years ago. So life is not good. But let me go back to, if there are no other questions. I'm willing to answer any question. It's very important.
Following the war, can you explain your journey out of Romania?
Yes, I will. Well, in 1947, in October 1947, I was a student in second year pharmacy, very much anti-communist, like rebel, student rebel. And I knew that I was marked to be arrested. So I decided that my future is not anymore in Romania. My father and I took a trip to the border, to the Hungarian-Romanian border, paid money, lots of money, to a guide, 2 guides actually, to take us over the border from Romania into Hungary, stopped in Gyula, was in Budapest, crossed into Austria, to Vienna, was in Vienna for 3-4 months. From Vienna went towards the west, Salzburg, Innsbruck, down to Italy, from Italy back to France, 1948 in France, obtained a visa to go to Cuba, lived in Cuba from 1948 to 1950, came into Canada in 1950, September 50. Stayed in Quebec and Montreal, dealt with nationalism. I had enough with nationalism in Europe. I didn't want to go through the same type of a story in this country. I came to Vancouver. I kissed the ground because it's a wonderful place to be. So that's answering your question.